Hello, hello. Welcome to Healthy Perspectives, a podcast that takes on current cultural and social issues through a clinical lens. Hello. All right. Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us. For those of you who are brand new, I appreciate that you're here. Please like, follow, subscribe, all those things like we talked about in the intro and the conclusion. I purposely obviously made those things right around that 30-second mark so you don't have to listen to a bunch of annoying stuff. But we do like it when you like, follow, and subscribe because it does help. Let's get right after today's topic. I've been, as a therapist, one of the things that I encounter is where my mind goes on some of the things that are going on in the world. And recently, I've been pondering this whole thing of like, how is it that we are dealing with the same thing almost 100 years later? For some of you who know me, have worked with me, stuff like that. One of the things that I've been reading lately is Hitler's book called Mein Kampf. And in this book, I am just reminded over and over and over again that we are in a repeat. Like, that's literally one of the things that is going on right now. We have hit the big old giant repeat button. And unfortunately, we're doing some of the same things today we did back in the 1920s through the 1940s. And we know how that ended up. We know the story of the Holocaust. We know the story of the Jews being persecuted and put in these death camps. We know this story. And yet, here we are, talking about Hamas and Palestine and these terrorists, and oftentimes doing it with sympathy for the terrorists. That would be like saying, hey, that Hitler guy, he wasn't too bad. Are you joking? That being said, I also went, September 11th, 2001 was only 20 years ago, a little over 20 years ago. And yet it seems like we've forgotten. And so my little therapy mind over here starts going, what should I do with this? How do I make this into therapeutic content for my listeners? And I went right back to a guy named Hermann Ebbinghaus. Back in the 1800s, we started exploring the idea of forgetting, the concept of forgetting. And the forgetting curve became this well-known, well-researched, and reproducible and reproduced content. So back in 2015, which is not that long ago, Ebbinghaus's research was reproduced with almost identical results. And what are the results of the forgetting curve? The results are this. Nearly 50% of what you learn is lost in 20 minutes. Holy smokes, folks. That's a big stinking deal. That means we have got to do a better job of learning. So hang with me. Around the 24-hour mark, between 65 and 70% of what you learned is gone. Just poof, gone, folks. Gone. It plateaus between 25 and 20% for most people. Within a couple of days, it's down there, and then it just sort of plateaus. You kind of remember bits and pieces, but not always in a linear fashion or a sensible fashion, just bits and pieces. Now, that's a big deal. That curve plummets super fast, and then it plateaus pretty low. Let's be real. Like if I told you, I've got 5 things for you to remember, 5. And if you remember all 5, you live. If you forget any one of them, you die. Pretty much no matter what you do, you're going to forget one and die. That's what that says. Pretty close to you're going to forget one and you're going to die. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you do if you don't take intentional steps. Now, I can tell you what some of those steps are so that we don't forget things like 9/11, so that we don't forget things like the Holocaust, so that we don't forget that the United States was founded on the freedom of religion because of persecution in other lands. And so that we don't forget that there were natives to the United States, America, before those who were being persecuted in another land showed up. And so we don't forget that we have responsibility to our neighbors and to our friends and even to our enemies. There's a certain thing that's reasonable in war. That's why we have rules of engagement, folks, so that children aren't raped and beheaded, so that adults who aren't part of the war could potentially get out of harm's way in a safe manner. No, it's not always possible. I understand war is a very ugly endeavor, just in general. But I can tell you what is completely avoidable. Children being raped, that's avoidable. Now, you put a gun in a child's hand and now all of a sudden it's a different story. They don't know what they're doing any more than they were explained. It's like, hey, point this down there. Just start firing. They'll do it. It's a child. And unfortunately, that puts lives in danger. So there are some ugly parts of war, but we can't forget. So I'm going to give you the down and dirty, what you can do to remember better. So hang with me. Pretty simple. I'm going to give you 4 things that will flatten that curve or eliminate the vast majority of it altogether and bring your memory up to 80, 90%, sometimes even more, depending on what it is. Number 1, to flatten the curve is at the 20-minute mark of not doing whatever the new learning is. Get back to it. Relearn it. Because remember, in that first 20 minutes, we're already losing. We want to turn that curve back up to 100, and then it'll come back down, and then back up, and then back down. And if we can keep that curve near that 100 mark for a lengthy period of time, hour, 2 hours, 2 days, that kind of a thing, where it's there, we can flatten that curve and we can improve our memory to 80+% of the content. So it's review times 3 within the first 2 days, because what we need to do is bring it back up and spike it again. And then we learn another 20%, 30%, and then spike it again. And the rule of thumb is 3 reviews. 3 reviews will flatten that curve between 80 and 100%, depending on what it is. Okay. And again, you can't wait a full day or 2 days because too much is disappearing during that time. You want to do it within 24 hours, within 48 hours, within 72 hours. So review. All right. Number 2, overlearn. You're like, overlearn? Yeah, that's called immersion. Okay. Immersion. I'll give you the easiest example of immersion. You go to a new culture where they speak a different language than you. And you put yourself in a position where in order to survive, you have to learn things, and you have to learn things rapidly. The brain has a mechanism that will kick in when we are immersed in something completely. Where think about it like if you're under the water, you got to learn how to get up to the top. You just have to, because the alternative is not good. Okay, so overlearn, immersion. Number 3, this is one of my favorites. I love teaching this. I often do it with a rubber band in therapy. I'll grab a bunch of rubber bands and I'll put them around my fingers. But this is attach it to other memories. When you already have things that you remember, and you can attach a new memory to an old memory, it makes memory recall easier and more accurate. So instead of 25% after 24 hours, you might be down to 50%. Why? Because you attached it to a memory you already have. which makes the recall easier, which makes the review easier, which is a form of immersion, but it's based on attaching it to other things you've already been immersed in. Okay. Number 4, this is the final one I'm going to give you today. Down and dirty. We're getting after it. Explore the gaps in your learning on purpose. Now, how do you do that? You challenge your biases. That means think about why you got to where you got and then say, okay, I'm going to take the opposite view. And I'm going to try to prove the opposite view correct. In doing that, we flip the coin. We see another side of whatever it is. And the cool part about that is if you do that, you actually get closer to that 100% than any other method here. Because what you end up doing is you learn it conceptually. It's like the easiest example there is when you learn something, you can learn it so well. But then when you teach something, it takes on a whole nother level. And so exploring the gaps in the learning on purpose will take you to a brand new level. And we won't forget things like the Holocaust or 9/11 or, what was going on in the 90s in Saudi, in the Middle East, and the terrorism that we were dealing with. And let's see, what else? Korea, Vietnam, Iwo Jima. There's so many things that we just won't forget because they're important. Now, you don't have to become a history buff. I am not a history buff. I like learning about history. I like learning about the concepts. I like doing the 4th thing on the list. I like exploring gaps in the learning on purpose. And sometimes that means I need to understand some of the history, but oftentimes I'm doing it for conceptual reasons. I don't care about the names. I don't care about the people. Not that I don't care, but you get the point. Explore those gaps, folks. Do the learning. Reduce that curve, that Ebbinghaus curve, that forgetting curve. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope this was helpful. I know it was quick and dirty, but I appreciate you joining us, and have a good one. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening. We appreciate our audience a lot, so we give you some simple ways to track us down. Please like, subscribe, and follow all the podcasts on different platforms, but you can also email us at healthyperspectives@protonmail.com, or you can check out our website at healthy-perspectives.com/podcast. It's a backward slash. So if you want to go to our landing page, if you go to healthy-perspectives.com, you'll still find us. You just got to click on the podcast button. Thank you so much.